you know, I don't think it matters where you come.
Good evening and welcome to the studio this evening. I hope everybody is well. I've got so much stuff in front of me now that I can't hardly see my own screen. Never mind, we shall deal with it. I am trying out some new lighting tonight. My face might look a little darker. Oh yeah. But I'm not getting quite so much glare off the board. I'm using an LED light system, which isn't too bad. I'm still getting some. Hopefully, as I apply pyrography, that will change. If you see me keep looking behind, there's a pussycat laid on the desk behind me. And it's amazing how they lay. The way he's laid on everything that's there, including some fairly sharp rotary dental bits. And he's laid on them without much of a problem. I am a little bit concerned because one of my models is behind there. An articulated truck, a 1/14 scale articulated truck, which is both heavy and expensive, and he's pushing it off gradually. So if it gets much closer, I'm going to turf him off. But for the moment, we shall see how it goes. Right, where's my eraser? So last night we put in place some lines for the window and for the Go Faster stripe. because the cat has been late. I'm nervous. Yeah, I'm nervous about you. You don't half look cute though, you know, when they do it. Because he's laid there with a paw over his head and he's got his tongue hanging out just a little bit. Kind of feel like just dusting his tongue with a brush. And his back paws are sort of spread out. We'll see. He's been laid on this board as well, so I've got fine cat hairs on it, which I want to get rid of because if I catch them with a pyrography tool it smells terrible. If you've ever burnt hair, somebody else's or your own, it's not a pleasant smell. Right, so I want to get rid of the overextended lines just around there, and we'll go over the window panel lines in a moment, and we do have some panel lines to come down here. I'm not going to go, in fact I'm actually thinking whether or not to bother. It adds a little bit of interesting detail to put some of the panel lines in. I'm not sure whether I want to. We shall see. Let's do the window first. Then I've got another go faster stripe down here as well as those. And then we've got some areas just around at the front of these wings here to put in the front lights, and that will do for the main bit of the train itself, unless, as I say, we do put in some panel lines. We'll see. Anyway, we'll get that far and we'll see how far we go. So, to borrow, as I have been doing, a phrase from Ghostbusters, heat 'em up. I'm wondering, that lights a little bit. I wonder if it will work a little bit better if I bring it closer to sit it. Yeah, you're getting the glare off of that then, but the camera is benefiting from a slightly better lighting up of the board. Doesn't make a lot of difference to what I'm seeing here, but it does to the camera. We'll try it there for a bit of experimentation, I'm afraid. Could probably almost do with some really big lights, but not getting them just yet. So I'm okay here to go over my pencil line. That's a bit warm for this. Because the pencil line was very light, this colour blue here is probably going to be darker than this line I'm putting in, so it's not too bad to just go over the top of it. And tonight you will notice I remembered to put my other glasses on. Now the other thing I will just mention is that I don't actually know how long this stream will go on for it is possible that I may cut the stream short. I've got a headache, and I am at the moment both warm and tired and thirsty, and those three things together are a trigger for me for migraine. So if I do develop a migraine, then I will be stopping the stream. In the meantime, I'm drinking. 2 out of 3, not a problem. 3 out of 3, maybe. Actually, let's put a fan on as well. That way. Fortunately, it's a bit noisy, but if I cool down, I'm less likely to get a migraine. Now this is the outline of the white Go Faster stripe. And I'll fill it, do it down here as well. You can see very much using this tool like almost like a 6H or 7H pencil. So with that hardness of a pencil, you have a tendency to need to go over a line multiple times. Get rid of the hair. But I have got the heat turned down quite significantly on this tool. I've just done that line there. Yeah, it's not quite turned down as far as it will go, but I can turn it down even further. This tool actually is on the nature of this particular one, or the way in which it's just the current it draws, is that even if I turn this all the way down, it quite often, well, it certainly is too hot to go on the card. I've got to be really careful if I try it on thick paper or card. On wood it's not so bad, as you can see. I can just about use it, but on paper it's too hot when it's turned down to its minimum. So I'll just switch that off for a moment, because I'm now going to look at doing the Go Faster stripe on here. Now I do want to put these in. I mean, I can make this up, you know. I've got the basic outline of the train. I can make up everything else about it, but putting the Go Faster stripe in down here, as it is on the, well, was on the real train and is on the reference picture that I painted, is it allows me to show a little bit of the shape of this curved wing as well, which helps you know, establish sort of a 3D looking design. So yeah, it's a small yeah. I do have a tendency, as those people who watch the stream regularly will see, is to talk in a shorthand. Yeah, sure, that sort of thing. And it really is not really coherent thoughts going on. They're just sort of musings almost. So I put that down there, and we want another one just about there. Like that. The rest of it will, the rest of this particular line will then do by hand. So this wants to curve, because I've got a compound curve here, so it curves up and in, so it kind of disappears like that, because this is kind of pointy nosed. About there actually. So let me just rub that out a bit and put it back in again. I don't want too much graphite there. So this one kind of follows that curve. Excuse me a second. You, if you're staying here, stop pushing things off. How about you go on the windowsill? Go onto the windowsill. Go on, onto the windowsill. Yeah, I know you don't like being persuaded to go somewhere, do you? No, you can't go on that desk. How about I assist you off of there? Excuse me, folks. You're looking to get down. Do you want some help getting down? Come on then. Come on. Right. Oops. And there you go, folks. You can't stay there. That is a Felix. That's a Felix pussycat. No, don't chew the end of that. That's my light. I've only just got it. I don't need you chewing it. Come on. Let me lift you off. There you go. Yeah, you don't like it, do you? Oh dear, he is amusing because if you pick him up, the first thing his front paws do is they go out as though you're sort of holding your arms out as wide as he possibly can. He does exactly the same thing, and it's really amusing. It's not that he feels unsafe, he just doesn't like being held. So the paws go out to catch anything. Now that I've got that light there, we're getting, yeah, again that's what it is, I think. That's been, the more I tip that, the more glare you get. Let me just see if I can give you a little barn door. There. That's shading the camera now from the light that's up there, so that should help with that. Right. So I've got to get, yeah, a nice curve just around here. I also have to take into account the compound curve. That looks better. And that line just disappears to there. Okay, yeah, that looks okay to me. I like those curves. They look quite nice and smooth. So we'll now again go over them with the pen. That one's a little bit too dark. That'll do. Okay, so that's one line done there. Now we do the same again with this top one. Well, I think not on this particular, although I am tempted, but not on this particular pyrographic image. But what I might do on a future one is try using some watercolor pencils on the wood. Actually, I could try some ink as well. So what I've got is I've got some little tiny credit card sized wooden plywood blanks, and you can colour pyrographic images. You can colour them either after or you've applied the pyrography or before, which gives you potentially different effects, but applying it before kind of puts a glaze over the top of the colour, so it sort of is embedded in rather than painting over the top. So what I might do after this image, either on this pyrographic sequence or the next one, is to try doing something and laying down some colour and then applying pyrography over the top, just to see what it's about. Not done it before, so just see how we can use colour in pyrography. I'm not altogether sure whether a watercolour pencil is the right thing to use, but hey, we're experimenting, or we'll experiment at the time, so we'll see how that goes. Now I'm quite liking that. Now whilst the headlights will go in, do I want a sharp edge on those? Not really. There will be a sharp edge, but I want a sharp edge that's not an edge. If that doesn't, I know that sounds a bit odd, but I don't actually want an outline. I want a shading edge for that. So do we put any panel lines in on the train itself, I'm wondering, or do we do it now or later? Possibly later. If we're going to put panel lines in, we can always put those in afterwards. That's not too much of a problem. So one of the things I do want to do here now is the cabin, front cabin here, will be shaded and it's see-through. So what I do want to do is to be able to see the other side of the cabin. Especially since we're looking up. Now I'll see whether that looks right in a minute. But the other thing, of course, is we're not actually looking at the top here either. I suppose I don't actually have to do this. So I'm going to draw it in and then we'll see whether I change my mind or not about this. That doesn't look... No. That one doesn't look right. That one might, but the second one there doesn't. So let's get rid of that second one and take another look. That's acceptable. But that isn't. So there's like a centre support line all the way down, and I'm trying to get the other side of the cabin in here. It's partially a matter of perspective. It's the angle that doesn't look right for that. See if I can get that. If that goes over there, that's going to be the top, and then it's going to sort of come down. Yeah, that would look odd like that. It's going to be a bit... What I'm doing is just talking through in my own mind how something is going to look. I'm trying to visualize it, and it's quite an odd angle to visualize it at. In fact, let me borrow this, your little. So what I'm trying to do is put in the other side. So it's quite thin because of the angle I'm looking at it. So actually I'm not that far off in that very first. So it's kind of going to be like that. Yep, that's kind of what it is. So as soon as I put it down on the paper, I can visualize that a lot better. So let me give you your little band or hat back there. I guess I ought to make one just a little. That'll do for now. I was just thinking I could make a little fitting, you know, like a camera shade for the camera. Surprisingly enough, hey, who'd have thought it? A camera shade for a camera. But I'll do that later. So we're going to come up a lot. Closer than I was before. That doesn't look bad because I'm actually I'm actually sort of more straight onto it than on the reference. And so that gap is a lot smaller than I was drawing it from a perspective point of view, because that line there, which you can just about see, is this line on the other side of the train. Right, so we're now almost, well, we are ready now, I guess, for some more colour. And I think we'll switch to using a wider tip than this one. Yeah, so all I'm going to do is just swap the pens out. Come on, in you go, thank you. Let me just see if I have, well, I have got that there, so non-slip mat, nice convenient box. That box in non-slip mat, it becomes a non-slip box. I can just sit it there, put that on it, and it's at an angle now. That'll be a little bit easier for me to work at, and I don't have quite as much glare. Twitch is quiet tonight. Almost makes me want to think, if you guys, is there anybody there? No, I can't get the table to float. Right. So I can start with that, or I can start with that big back window. I think I will start with the back window. Being a little bit tentative because I'm not sure how hot this tool actually is at this stage. Right. Certainly not really hot enough, but that's okay. The moment it's just smoothing the wood a little bit. I'm just seeing. Okay, I do need this hotter. That's okay. Actually, it helps if you put it on the right tool. I don't know if this will show up on camera. It might. I was, of course, using a cold tool, and if you can see, I've got that. That's actually glowing red. So you can get them quite hot. That wasn't what I intended to do. I'm going to turn that back down. There we go. Yeah, I can now see an effect from this, which explains why I couldn't before. I thought it was just too cold. It was because I was using the wrong tool. There's a switch on the control unit which lets me choose which of the two pens gets the current and therefore heats up. I'd forgotten to switch it over to this one. Now they're really dark tinted windows, so I will need this to be quite dark, not quite as dark as that, but to be quite dark. But I'm going to do it in stages. I'm going to try and do it in stages. Again, it's a window, there will be reflections in the window, so I'm not worried too much about complete evenness. I do want to try and make it as even as possible. But if it doesn't go that way, it's not a disaster or something that I need to work hard to stop happening. I am trying to stop it happening. It would be nice to practice the skill of being really smooth, which is what I'll try and do. And doing it in a few passes over does help try to keep things smooth. If it's done light, you can then just go back over areas that are slightly too light before you mess it up. Now on the reference image, there's a flare or a glare line, a white reflection off of this window, which looks quite good, so I might see if I can allow for something like that. And effectively I can't paint white, but what I can do is not paint dark, so I just leave an area not quite as darkly coloured, and it looks lighter. Might be amazing thought that, but that's kind of what you have to bear in mind in doing this. You have to think sort of backwards. It isn't painting. To all intents and purposes, it's an irreversible paint. It's an indelible ink type of situation. So you do have to think ahead and say, actually I want that bit to remain lighter. Right, so we just, and now it's just really more of this. Now I got a, as soon as I put the tool down just then, I got a very slight dark fleck just around where I'm working. Probably by the time I finish that won't be noticeable, but that's the sort of thing. That's just because when I had the tool off the wood, it gained a lot of heat, and literally when I touched it down, that's what happened. It reacted really quickly because the tool just dumped a heck of a lot of heat into the wood just at that one specific place. Why you've always got to, well, I will say always, depends on what you're doing, but in this, what I'm doing here, you've always got to keep the tool moving, especially when you touch it down. You might be surprised at just kind of how much concentration this takes as well. Doesn't look like I'm perhaps doing much particularly in the way of highly skilled stuff, but I am trying to be really consistent about the shade that I'm obtaining, and to do that I've got to be very careful about the path I move the pen over, because it's very easy to cause some areas to go darker than the others, so there's quite a bit of concentration goes into trying to do this. If you see me sticking my tongue out, you'll know I'm really concentrating. Actually, I'm not quite sure how compatible concentrating hard with a headache is. As I said, I will be going back over this. This window I think wants to be darker than this. But when you're working monochrome like this, it's all relative. And what can appear very light, like this might, it can appear really dark sometimes when you get something else next to it, a different shade next to it. So I tend not to want to go too dark straight away, just because that sometimes limits my ability to make other things darker. If I suddenly decide or realise that something else wants to be dark or darker than the windows, and I've made these really dark, it's quite hard to get that extra darkness. So you have to work hard at doing it. So not going to your final colour straight away can be an advantage. Also means I'm a bit chicken in that I don't want to risk having to do it again just because of that. So I'm being a little bit cautious or tentative rather than being bold about it. Now, if I'm going to put a flare in, it's probably going to be about there. So what I'm going to do is just leave an area uncoloured for the moment. Which will then appear to be lighter, which of course it is, it's uncoloured. But that will resemble the white flare. I'm seeing in the reference. I think I'm tending to make this slightly darker than the middle bit. We might have to go over that middle bit again. The colour is building up quite nicely. I'm quite pleased with the smoothness of this. I am, like I was doing when I was doing the really dark line, I'm trying not to press this tool, I'm trying to keep the tool in contact with the wood but not pressed down on the wood. That way I disturb the surface the least amount possible, and I don't get sort of odd tooling marks. It doesn't make it go shiny either, because this is right, like using a hot tool on wood like this is a bit like using an iron on a t-shirt or a shirt, something like that, where you smooth out all the creases. And using a hot tool on wood like this, if I press down, I do indeed sort of smooth out the fibres, get them closer together, and that makes the wood a little bit more shiny. Now when I do the paint, well, ultimately even the window, I suppose what I could do is press down and cause that shiny effect, because we talk about windows and metal here, so it would be shiny reflective. It might be something I'll consider doing, just to add that little bit extra thing to the image. Right, okay. Now you may think this is going slow. I actually think this is going quite fast. If you think it's going slow, you've probably been watching I think you don't have much patience, or you've been watching YouTube videos where it appears to go very much faster. Most of the time YouTube videos, however, are time-lapsed, so it does look to go faster. I'm not particularly doing this slowly at all. Whilst a more experienced artist could well sort of go to their final colour all in one go, and therefore the overall speed is quicker, they would still be moving the tool at about this sort of rate. So they effectively would finish the piece quicker, but not necessarily work quicker. They just shortcut the process a little bit. Now I'm going along the length of the train here in doing this. That way, and I've done that specifically rather than going in any other direction, because that way any tooling marks will tend to look in keeping with the train, so they might look like a reflection, they might look like a panel or something like that, because of the cylindrical nature of this train. You see things like the light flares as long streaks more than you'll see them as sort of vertical. Otherwise, you know, if you'd be doing sort of rounded curved shapes in order to represent something cylindrical. So now the idea, of course, is that you don't see the tooling marks, but you still tend to see a direction that the tool moved in. Can't always, depends on how smooth I can do this, but if I go in the right direction, then there is less chance of me making a mistake which is harder to correct. Let's put it that way. dear. Twitch is quiet tonight. I know in the UK we have a bank holiday coming up on Monday. That's a public holiday where a lot of people are not at work, and because of that a lot of people do take the opportunity, shall we say, to go away for a short holiday on a Friday. I'll come back on Monday and obviously then restart work on Tuesday. But I didn't think Twitch was necessarily just the UK, because I don't think that public holiday like that is particularly common across the world. It might be, I guess. Maybe that's where the whole of Twitch have gone, or one of the shows. Which is on. I've completely forgotten which it is, but I believe there is one this weekend. Certainly in the UK. I don't know about elsewhere. See, I'm saying the UK. I don't know if it is. It could be in somewhere like Germany. Got a feeling that there is one on over there. Looks not bad on. I've got a slightly darker patch there on the camera, but that's not bad. And this tool that I've got on, as opposed to the other shader that I did the centre bit with, this one is just slightly larger shoe, larger. The base plate is slightly larger. It doesn't quite have a very smooth heat distribution on it, but it's the larger area makes it a bit easier to do smoother fills like this. So as a beginner, if you choose to start with tools like I'm using here, then effectively you really only need one or two tips to start with. There are often hundreds available pre-made, or you can make things out of wire for yourself. And that's effectively what I haven't made these, but these are made out of wire, and then that wire is squashed really flat and bent to produce this shape. But effectively you can do almost everything with one pen like that, for example, because I can turn it that way up and do really fine lines. I can work fine lines vertically like that, and I can get wider shaded lines by holding it flatter, and you can also work off the side of the tool as well. So it's a very versatile sort of shape, is this. So if you're going to start with tools like I've got here, that sort of either this bait or the one I swapped it out for would be ideal starting tools. This one obviously is just smaller. Quite often they do say that for beginners, one like this, which is called a spoon shader because it's spoon shaped, can be better. It's potentially easier to get smooth gradients with it because of the preheating effect as you go down. Obviously the bottom of the spoon is in contact with the wood, but the slopes all around it preheat the wood as you're going over it, tending to make it easier to create a smoother shape. And I'm actually finding this is easier than this, but different people find things differently. So maybe a spoon shader or a flat shader, either would be ideal to start with. Because even with the spoon shader, you can turn it that way and use the edge and still get very fine lines. All that happens is if you develop more skill, is whilst you'll find your own favourite tools, and sometimes things like the writing tip are just a little bit easier for certain things than using this way up, for example. So you do collect tools. I think everybody that does something like this, with its paint brushes or brushes or pencils or watercolour or anything really, you just tend to collect them, sometimes with good intentions, and sometimes it looked nice and you wanted one, and other times it turns out that it wasn't as good as you thought it would be and you never use it again. But that's just as it happens. So I'm just going down to the bottom line now. What I've done, obviously, as you can see, is turn the thing upside down. That way I can see where I'm going up to, the line I'm taking the window to, so I can see it. Now doing this edge here is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. I'm going to have to do it. I wasn't particularly wanting to go diagonal, but I'm going to need to, so otherwise I'm going to get dark marks. So I'm going to be really careful here not to establish a tooling mark. At the start, so I'm barely touching the wood here. Okay, I'm quite pleased with that. Not finished that by any means. What I intend to do a little bit of is to make this bottom end of it darker than the top end, just because as it goes over the top it's going to reflect more of the light, pick up more of the light from the sky. I'm going to see it to be darker. Now we'll do something similar here in the cabin. Now what I'm aiming for here is, again, there's a window over the top, so I'm aiming for a transparent look, but because we're looking at the inside just in here, darker than what I'm going to see through here. This is window through window. Robert1123, hello, welcome. Salut. as well to you. Thank you for dropping in and proving that chat works. I trust that you are well. Well, for the whole of this, I don't want tooling marks at all, so I'm really trying to be as light a contact as I can get away with. But it really making contact with the wood doesn't speeds up the browning process quite a lot. So I want to make contact with the wood if I can, but I kind of want to avoid it. Thank you very much, Robert. That's very kind of you. This is just one of the crafts that I do, though, so I would hope you'd like the others just as much. But we will be doing this one for at least a week, possibly more. It's there's somewhere between 10 and 20 hours of work in this particular piece. You don't understand the term pyrography? Yeah, can do. Pyrography is an English word, but it derives from a Greek, well, two Greek words really, which is pyro and graphy. The pyro means fire, and graphy means writing. So the literal translation of pyrography is writing with fire from Greek, but I feel, generally speaking, it translates better as painting with heat. So pyro being heat and graphy meaning painting in that particular case. So that's where the term pyrography comes from. Other people will often say wood burning, which I don't particularly like because I'm not burning the wood. Apart from the technical aspects of what's happening here isn't burning. It's more akin to cooking the wood, which turns it brown. So as I apply heat, the wood turns brown. The more heat I apply, the browner it gets. If I apply sufficient heat, it would then start to burn. But I'm not about to do that. That's not what I want to do. It doesn't suit the image. And if you get to that stage of actually setting wood on fire, it's really uncontrolled and it's not a good idea. So this tool is being heated by electricity down this cord from a control unit, which is just over there. That control unit has a control knob on it, which allows me to adjust just how much electricity gets sent to the tip here, and therefore how hot it gets. Now, as I mentioned, the more heat I apply to the wood, the more brown it gets, and I can do that in 3 different ways. I can turn the heat up so this tip gets hotter. I can hold it in one place for a longer period of time, or I can apply heat to it, to that one place, more than once in rapid succession. which if you like builds up the heat in bursts, and it gets hotter that way and therefore goes browner. Generally speaking, what I am doing is a combination of all three, or at least two. I don't often adjust the temperature, so I'm slowing down how fast I move, holding it in one place for longer, and I do go over the top a few times to build up the heat into the layers. But I'm trying at this point here, because I'm depicting shiny glass and shiny metal. What I'm trying to do is, one of the effects you get, especially with a lot of heat, is the wood shrinks away from the tip, and it tends to smooth out and go slightly shiny. If I press down, I exaggerate that flattening and shiny effect. Now, having said I want to create something shiny, it might seem like that's a good idea to create something really shiny. It is to do that, and ultimately at the end I may do that, but there's a great danger in the early stages that what that does is create like ruts in a road or in a field with sort of furrows and peaks, and those lines then show up in the final image, and it takes quite a lot of work to get rid of them. So if I sort of flatten it down slowly, making sure that I don't create those peaks and troughs, and then I'll get a smoother overall image, so it looks more metallic like than trying to press down hard to start with. So at this stage I'm trying to be almost as light as I can, but still keep the tool in the contact with the wood. It will turn the wood brown if I hold it just above it. It'll just do it slower. So I'm a little impatient, so I'm trying to keep it in contact but not to put any pressure down on it. Chosen07, good evening, welcome back to the studio, nice to see you again. Thank you, Robert. Sorry, Chosen. So this part is sort of inside the inside wall of the train, of the cab, looking through one layer of glass. The rest of it will be sort of sky looking through two layers of glass. So this wants to be darker than this will be, at least to a visible extent. Again, it doesn't matter how darker really. I will probably end up adjusting it to just something I like the look of. The windows are tinted though, and are quite dark on the reference, and that's how I remember them from seeing them from the outside, is that they look dark. You can't tell when you're inside, but Now I've got that just right in the bottom there, a little bit darker than I wanted. Actually, that's not bad. It's not bad because I've got I'm thinking whether I want to apply a particular detail. And the particular detail is that I know there is a seat just inside his nose area, and you can see it through the outside. You can see it just above, and it would look like a dark mark. But that's a bit, nah. I've changed my mind. I'm not going to show that. There's no real need. It doesn't particularly add anything, I don't think, to the image. So what I'm going to do is just work with this being this dark down here. Now, it could well be, of course, it would be darker at the bottom than at the top. It certainly is on the train itself. This, because it's cylindrical, it curves under, so this area here is darker than this area up here, even though it's the same colour. And this area is lighter because it's flared out, and this is undercut, so even though they're all the same colour, so shade comes into it quite a bit. So I didn't really want that bottom to get a little bit darker that it has done there, but we shall work with it. I've got plenty of scope anyway here. I mean, we are working at the really light end at the moment. So, you know, that overcooking it slightly isn't really a problem. I just darken everything a little bit. And since I do want to darken it anyway, then, you know, it's it just got there before everything else did. Now, working up to a line isn't easy, because the idea is that I don't have a real dark edge on that line. I don't want it to be like I've taken a black marker and gone down it. So doing it up to a line is a challenge. Because I don't want I'm moving this tool and I don't want it to be stopped at the point where I touch it down, because that's what creates that black or darker edge. I want the whole thing to be a particular same shade, and so what I have to do is move it, touch down, and keep moving it. So I've got to judge the right point as I'm doing this to touch it down, so that I don't get that blob from the point where I touch it down and then start moving it. And I want this to be just a little bit darker than I've got it, so But that's that can often be harder than colouring it in the first place, is just to drop the shade a little bit. Okay, that's not so bad for the moment. And I've got to do now is do one right up the nose, and then the rest gets filled in as well. Now the nose one is going to be a bit of a challenge because it gets really thin. Oh, I'd like it to be really thin just down here. So I'm having to work more with just the point of this tool. This is one situation where I could perhaps use the spoon shader, because of the spoon shaped bowl there's only a small contact area on the bottom. The problem is it's right underneath the tool, so you can't actually see that point while you're working. I mean, obviously you can see the mark it's making, and you can adjust your angles and things to put that where you want it, but you have to get in a roughly the right place to start with. Now if you work with that tool enough, you get used to exactly where that is, but I haven't worked with it now for several tens of hours, so I am definitely out of practice with using the spoon shaped shader. And for something like this, I'd be highly at risk of it going in the wrong place. So even though working with just the sharp tip of this particular flat shader will take longer, it is actually less risky for me than the image to do that. But it is colouring up quite nicely. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to take it to the colour of this outer line, so that outer line basically vanishes. I'm also trying to maintain that nice smooth curve that I do with the pencil with this tool. and at the same time as all of this, try and make it a consistent colour all the way through. One of the characteristics of this particular train is all the smooth curves everywhere, so it has an extremely streamlined look. And it's turned out to be exactly the same colour, which is good. So that's kind of like the inside of the cab, and effectively what was a support, I'll call it a beam, but stripped right down the inside of the glass, so the whole canopy was one piece, but this is kind of a nose support for it. So now I fill this in somewhat like that. If I go that dark though, this is going to be the same colour, so I need to darken this off a little bit first. And this is kind of what you do when you're setting this. I mean, the whole it was a purple cab, but obviously I can't do purple at this stage. The bit that I will need to do, colours are relative, so these, you know, it's a purple tint, it's a dark purple tint in the windows. The train is, most of the train is blue, so obviously the dark purple is darker than the blue. The go faster stripes are white, and the underneath is white. So you've got the dark strip, which is black, the purple tinted windows, which are quite dark, the blue, and then the white for colour ranges on the train itself. We've then got the beam it's riding on, which is concrete, so that's sort of lighter than the blue but darker than the grey, darker than the white, so that it gives you a colour position for it in black and white terms, and we will put some detail on there as well. And sat underneath it is like a pan to catch drips and debris and things, which is white as well. So we've got to bear that in mind, especially though, because we're going to, all you're seeing at the moment is a whole mass of lines, because what you're not seeing is the shape of that pan, which comes when we put panel lines into it, which will then show the shape up. And things like the underneath of the beam here that we can see, which of course will be dark concrete, so whatever colour that is, that bit gets darker. And finally there's then the sky. Which is a lighter version of the blue, of course. So again, you know, we've got white and we've got a colour in between. We're going to get a colour in between that, so between these two, the white and the blue for the sky, and the sky will be everywhere. So I want to make this darker so that I can do the window itself. Possibly not as dark as this. In fact, yeah, it's going to be. Yeah, I'm still going to darken it down a bit. It's quite light. You're seeing right through, you see. So I'm seeing sky through it. So I'm going over the same place again. That has a tendency to make the wood slightly darker, and I'm also actually going slower as well, so I'm applying more heat, which also makes it darker. I go over the wood a second time. It's not quite like layering two layers of paint over the top of each other, therefore it gets darker just because of that. There is a slight element of that, but generally speaking, what I'm doing is just cooking the wood a bit more, and therefore it goes browner. So it starts from the brown colour it currently is, and then cooks a little bit, which goes a little bit more. I suppose the best way to describe it is, although it's not hot, it sort of retains the memory of how hot it was, and therefore you're adding a bit more on top. I'm trying to explain a process which is kind of I just do it. I'm not actually thinking about the mechanics of doing this, other than occasionally saying to myself, slow down, you're going too fast. But all I'm really doing is putting the tool over the top and going, that's the colour I want, and I'm moving on, or lifting it off. I'm not actually thinking about techniques as I do this. Now I'm starting to see tooling marks appear now in the wood. So I'm going to be a little bit careful. I'm perhaps pressing down a bit too much. Now normally I'd be turning this wood over and doing the same thing to create a sharp line on the other side, and if this was clear glass, that's probably precisely what I'd be doing, even though it's quite hard to work in a backwards curve. But because this is tinted glass, and it's it in itself soften the edges a little bit, so I'm not bothered about doing it. I've got a softish edge. It's not a real sharp transition, but that, as I say, won't look bad. It will look kind of natural with the glass, the dark glass over the top. Leatherhorn, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. Nice to see you again. I've just turned that way for what reason? Oh yeah, because I want to go down this edge. You know, this is the edge of the glass, so I do want a really high contrast sharp edge. Now, what I need to do now is just work away from that edge a little bit. See if I can do it a bit better from this angle. It is quite hard to work away from edges, as I mentioned before, and get the edges to be the same colour as the rest. You, generally speaking, don't want them to stand out. I mean, I know I can think of reasons why if it stands out, why you might stand it out. Like there's a rubber seal around the window. A rubber seal will probably be black, therefore if the edges show up a bit, not unexpected, but I'm kind of making up the story to fit. All the lines you see have been done with one or other of the tools that I've got. They were originally drawn in by hand or with the assistance of a ruler, but then they were erased and gone over with most of them with this particular tool, which is a writing tip. So I'm using it like a really sharp pencil basically. And I've kind of just established most of the outlines very light, well, reasonably lightly, so that if I'd left them in pencil or graphite, as you work on it you rub them out and in rubbing them out you also spread that dark area out a little bit. The graphite sticks on the wood and you don't always want that, so having drawn the image onto the wood and then rub a little bit out, go over with a tool, rub a little bit out and so on, and then the brown marks from the pyrography stay, they don't rub out. So no, there's nothing really in it to do with the grain of the wood. Sometimes the grain of the wood helps a little bit, most of the time it doesn't, but you can see the grain, most of the grain here is sort of vertical. Roughly vertical. I think there's probably a tree branch came out just around about here, looking at the way the marks go, but essentially it's a vertical grain on this, which of course looks really weird because the actual wood marks are horizontal, but sometimes it takes me a little bit to just get an angle that I'm happy with using. So you'll see me turn the board around trying to work out which is the best angle for me to use to have the control that I'm looking for. A moment ago the wood looked like it was being a little bit less controlled than I wanted it to be. It was getting a bit darker too quickly, so I've just spun the wood around to work from a different angle. Therefore I'm using a different part of the pyrographic tool. And this particular tip, I do know that one of the edges is hotter than the other, and the tip's sort of halfway between, so there is slight temperature differences across the tool, and you can use that to your advantage. Interestingly, I've just noticed that when I draw this tool down, I actually wobble slightly side to side. Not intentionally, it just happens. So I'm just trying to get a reasonably consistent shade from edge to edge in here. There's certain bits that look lighter and darker than others. I'm just trying to even it out a little bit. That doesn't look bad. Right, I can now do the main glass. How do I want to do this? I'm going to try and do it as a how do I want to do this? I'm thinking about which way I want to colour this in. Do I want to colour it on a curve like this, or do I want to colour it this way because the curve is that way? It's actually a compound curve, but the reason I'm asking myself the question, although you probably can't see it, if you do get sort of a very slight impression of the way in which it's been done, like I can see that this one has been done horizontally, apart from right at that edge, so I need to work on that. But I can see it's been done horizontally. I can actually see that from the way the colour has applied itself. So I'm thinking about how I want to do it here, and I almost want half and half, so let's try half and half. Now it kind of is important I do it from edge to edge, ideally if I can in one go. Again, I'm depicting glass, so I'm trying to get a smooth thing, no sort of edges in the middle. Okay, you should just be able to see it starting to darken at the top there. I will be going over this again. It's far too light at the moment. Now, this area just either side of this dark stripe is blue, so I'm not actually bothered if I go over this edge. Certainly at this stage, because it's going to get more colour added to it to depict the blue, so I can for the moment just ignore the edge, which is quite useful. It's a lot easier if you don't have to work to an edge. Now this is being really slow to take colour, but I'm kind of happy with that at the moment. I'm not sure what colour I actually want for it, and I'm suspecting the camera isn't actually showing it up as dark as it actually looks here. Now I know ultimately it isn't particularly dark, but it is quite easy to be fooled by colours around it into seeing a different shade. At the moment it's kind of a smoky grey colour, It doesn't actually go brown until a little bit more heat has been applied. When I say smoky grey, ultimately it probably is a brown of some kind, but it's a really light one that does look grey. Kind of looks grubby actually at this stage, as though you've just taken a little bit of dirt and just rubbed it in. It's the one colour shade I don't particularly like when I'm applying pyrography, just because it does look sort of dirty. And it's about the lightest shade I can actually get out of this wood. Okay, Leatherhorn. Have a good day. You're watching early on your phone, but what are you signing? Well, you can watch without signing in. You just aren't able to chat if you do that. You can't join. You can't join the chat, but you can watch. Twitch.tv/Zaraganart. We'll get you there. You'll just see the chat continuously spinning, I think. Oh, either it just doesn't try. I can't remember which one, but I think. But that assumes you actually want to continue watching, and you might not, especially if you're driving. Don't watch and drive at the same time. Not a good idea. But have a good day. We will be finishing soon anyway, so you won't have missed much Leatherhorn. Now what I'd like to get here is a light brown rather than that slightly grubby looking grey colour, and if I can get that, then that'll be the colour I'm just after. We're really close to it, just at this top edge here. There's just a hint of the brown coming in, which is all I want for the moment. Right. Bit of a slow process. I don't actually. I want to be a bit careful. I want to try and keep this really smooth and a consistent colour across the whole of this canopy. So if I do it in small shades, I'm more likely to get a really consistent colour If I try and do it too much in one go, I'll get blobs, which are hard to sort of smooth out then. Theme Hospital, good evening. Welcome. You're just in time. Not long before finishing actually. But it will be a few minutes at least. Trust you've been well today, Theme Hospital. Today's not been too bad, but unfortunately I do have a headache, which luckily hasn't affected the stream. I'm warm, I'm tired, and I'm a little bit thirsty, which is a trigger for a migraine for me. So earlier on I was drinking quite a bit, and I got a fan going, and gradually the risk is gradually receding, which is good, because if I did get one, it's quite likely I'd have it all day tomorrow as well, which I don't want. It's a weekend. I don't want a headache. Well, I don't want a headache full stop, never mind on a weekend. Okay, well for the moment that doesn't look too bad. Thank you very much for that, Theme Hospital. I didn't know I was sounding unwell. Maybe I'm unconsciously doing it. I've got pain in the head more than anything else. That and a pain in the neck. If I'm holding it still, doing this. So well, that doesn't look too bad. The intention here was for it to look like glass, as though you're looking through the glass. It's tinted glass, so it might want to go a little bit darker, and we may just leave it as it is. It's tinted the same as this, but the way in which the angles are such that you can't see through this one to the window on the other side, so it looks darker. At the moment they're roughly the same shade, so this one is going to need to go, although the camera actually doesn't show them as the same shade, but they look it to me. So my eyes are either the camera's being deceived or my eyes are. probably my eyes, but if my eyes are true, then this one needs to go darker. Well, it does anyway, because they are really quite dark on the reference image that I'm using, and I think it would benefit from looking a lot darker, especially since around it is going to be a bluish colour, and I need quite a large contrast between the blue one and this. So this is relatively light, so the blue area might, for example, turn out to be this colour, and then this will go darker to maintain the contrast. You can see the glass effect. It's good, isn't it? It's good how you can see it even though there's no glass. That's what I love about either airbrushing, any of the art forms that monochrome art forms anyway, is that you can see that, and yet if I'd got colour available to me, I'd be able to depict it a lot easier, and yet you can still see it, and I just find it being able to do that really fascinating, just how it shows up. That's part of why I like art, I guess. But anyway, I'm going to put that tool down because unfortunately for you guys, potentially fortunately for me, because I could do with a drink, we're after 10 o'clock, which is about roughly when I finish. So it's been an interesting stream tonight. We've finished outlining just about everything. What's it going to be in there? It's going to be this. I'll show you the reference image. That's the reference. So this is one of the very first airbrush paintings I ever did. So there's lots, I'll say there's lots wrong with it, because I can see what's wrong with it, but it's not bad, it was done, I think it was the third one I ever did, so for the third one I'm quite pleased. What it is a monorail from Disney World, I think, in Florida. It's one of the older models. I think they've replaced them all now. I can't remember what they look like now, but I painted this a good few many years ago now, and I just happened to get it out the other day to show a 3D blog for some reason, and I looked at it and thought, I tell you what, that would be really nice as a pyrographic item, so that's what I'm doing. So I shall put that away. It looks better on stream than it is on person even. Yeah. Mind you, lots of things look better on stream than they do in person. So that's what it's going to be. I could have done with making this nose a bit longer, but what the heck. So we've filled in finished out filling in the outlines of the major elements. Filled in the windows. They're not the final colour of anything. That will come a little bit later. I probably will want to darken this next, so that when I put the blue in, and probably have to darken this a bit as well. The blue will be lighter, so I'll need to darken this to put a blue in, which is about this sort of colour, because even though this is white, we will be colouring that, because if I leave it uncoloured, it won't look correct. If I put a little bit of colour on, it'll look white. I don't quite understand that, but that seems to be how it works. And I also have to bear in mind I want the sky in there as well. Ideally I want to apply a colour to it. It again helps to bring the tones of everything together. It's a blue sky, it's a lighter blue than this, so my colour ranges is if for example this is the blue, then the sky has got to be lighter, and so on. So everything's in relation to each other. And I've got to do these things down here, the beam it's riding on and a pan. So everything's getting adjusted. So I'm quite pleased with the progress. tonight. The main outlines, as I say, have been done. That's kind of the hardest thing. Now we're establishing the main blocks of colour. Then we'll go into the more detailed areas, possibly put some panel lines in, headlights. We've got as I say, got the beam to do as well, and some details on that. But it's progressing quite well. I'm also quite pleased with the new light I've got. It looks a lot like the reference. Thank you for that theme hospital. I suppose that's a good thing. It was drawn by hand. So I at the start of the stream yesterday, or the day before, I can't remember when I started it. We started with a blank sheet of paper and drew it in. It's a lot easier to start one of these things by drawing on paper and then using trace down, like a bit like carbon paper, but not, to then just draw over it to get the image down onto the wood. If you put too much pencil mark on wood, even if you're rubbing it out, you tend to make the wood grubby and dark, and it sort of embeds itself in, and then when you put the pyrography over the top, it either makes it a lot darker because you've just put a grey underpaint in, or the lines show up. So I tend to with pyrography draw things out first on paper, trace it down, then rub a section out, use the pyrographic pen to put the edges in, and trace, rub another bit out, and go on like that until it's all been done. And that way I don't get problems with too much graphite being on the board itself. So yes, it was hand drawn, which is why the nose is shorter. It should have been a bit longer. Now that I look at the reference, the nose is, but you know what, doesn't really matter. It's an image. It wasn't intended to be a perfect copy. It was just intended to be I want to do something like this. Anyway, that's it for tonight. We'll carry on tomorrow. So if there's anybody watching that isn't following, I do, of course, as does most streamers, encourage you to push that follow button and get notifications when I go live. But of course I do recognise that you don't have to do that if you don't want, so I am grateful if you do, but it doesn't, you don't have to. If you just like the notification without following, you can follow me on Twitter. Still following, but a different system. At Zaraganart. A tweet does go out when I go live, and the only other tweets are about art or the stream, so you're not going to get inundated from me. If you'd just like to try and catch the next stream, which will be tomorrow, 8 PM UK time, 1900 hours GMT, or 2¼ hours ago was 8 o'clock. So that time tomorrow. Thank you all. It's been fun. See you on the next one. Bye bye.